Any non-committee members are welcome to come up and sit in these seats, sit in the front up here, and remember, you're non-voting, but you're allowed to come up, and no questions asked. All right, we want to call the meeting to order. All right, the meeting will please come to order. I'd like to ask you, if you would, please, to turn off your cell phones. And if any of you have any reason you need to speak to any member of the committee, please just take a note, go to this post to my left, your right, and one of my aides, assistants will come down and take your note and give it to members of the committee. And if any of you need to, that's fine. I want to say during the hearing today there will be no comments. I ask that you not, I want no applauding, no hissing, no cheering, no whistling. That will not be allowed. So we'll listen to the comments and we'll be taking the votes. So we have a quorum now, so we're going to call the meeting to order. And I'd like to ask if he would, Representative Nix, if he would please open our meeting with prayer. What's your number there, Randy? 24.
Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for the blessings you give to us, for the process you give us to work through legislation, Lord, for a republic form of government where representatives are elected to come together and deliberate and come up with the best idea that they can. And Father, we just pray that you would bless us with this process today. Give us your knowledge and your wisdom and your understanding, Lord, in respect for each other. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right, at this time, Representative Dudgeons, we have, I don't think we have any new legislation to sign, do we?
No, we have some reports.
All right, we have some reports, okay?
Take your time, Mr. Chairman. I'll do all my reports at once. Academic Achievement Subcommittee met over the past couple weeks, and we have a due pass recommendation on Senate Bill 383 by Senator Dugan, Senate Bill 384 by Senator Millar, and Senate Bill 372 by Senator McCoon.
Very good. All right, any questions by committee members? All right, this time, which one? Let's take up first, if we would, Senate Bill 372. Members of the committee, all these bills are in your folders, so it should be in this order, so if you could check. All right. Thank you, Senator. Glad to have you with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And if you would, just pull that mic right up to you, I think we'll be. All right, now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my pleasure to bring to you today Senate Bill 372. This came to me by way of a constituent request. Essentially, what Senate Bill 372 would do is it would require school districts to provide at the end of the freshman, sophomore, and junior year the grade point average that is calculated by GSFIC to determine HOPE eligibility. And I've had a couple of constituents actually come to me and say, I thought my child was on track for HOPE or for the Zell Miller Scholarship, and they were receiving weighted grade point averages that did not line up with the grade point average that's used by GSFIC to determine HOPE eligibility. Those calculations are already being made by GSFIC, so there won't be any additional expense or burden on the school district. They're transmitted to the school district already. We're simply asking through this legislation that the school district actually transmit it to the student directly, so the student and the parents have that information and can track the child's academic progress, so to hopefully keep them on track for HOPE or the Zell Miller Scholarship.
Okay.
I can comment about what happened.
Okay. Does the chair of that committee have any comments on that bill?
No, I think we had a good meeting. We worked the language out to be pretty compatible with all the different processes going on, and the different folks were there, and I think we came up with a good bill, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any committee members have a question? Number 19, that would be Representative Setzler. All right.
I'd like to thank the chairman for bringing this bill. I had a young man in my district very recently that this happened to. Thought he qualified for the HOPE Scholarship, did not. He was from a single-parent family that didn't have the means to provide any, so he was staring at working at a low-paid job, not going into college at all, vice, and he came in about a 2.9. I mean, it was in a situation where, had he known this, I think his reality would have been very different. So I appreciate the bill.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to pass, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion to pass. Do I have a second? Any further discussion? If not, I ask all who are in favor of this bill, please indicate by saying aye. All opposed by the like sign. Bill passes. Who will be carrying this for you on the House side?
I was hoping that Representative Dudgeon might be willing to do that.
All right, Representative Dudgeon. So indicate that, Courtney. All right. Next bill. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Dugan? Yeah, he's here.
All right, Senator Dugan here. Okay.
Yep. So 283.
All right, next bill we will be hearing on the agenda is Senate Bill 283. And so, Senator, if you'll please take a seat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Pretty straightforward bill. It allows public schools to celebrate traditional winter holidays. Subject to your questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Anybody on the committee have a question? Would you like to comment on that? Well, was that in your committee, Representative Clark? Was that in your committee or Representative Dudgeon's? Do you have any comments on that bill?
Looking for an amendment.
Oh, look at that. I thought there was an amendment.
Amendment
Right.
on a different bill, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
No, this bill didn't have any serious issues in committee. No, sir.
Okay. So, any questions? What encouraged you to do this bill? Because you made a good statement in your in our subcommittee.
I thought I had a record going here, Mr. Chairman, but I'll extend it a little bit longer. What I want to do is provide an oversight for some protection for the school systems. You know, that what we're doing right now is okay, but there seemed to be confusion of whether it was legal or not.
Right.
And I just wanted it's okay.
Making it legal, right?
It's perfectly fine to do it.
Very good. Appreciate you. All right.
Thank you, sir.
Wait just a second. Let's see if it's going to pass. Do I hear a motion? I have a motion. Do I have a second? All over the place. All in favor? Any questions? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Very good.
Mr. Chairman, now that it's passed, I'm honored to say that Representative Gravely is going to carry it for me.
All right.
I waited till it passed first, though.
Very good. Okay. Next bill is Representative.
Senate Bill 384 by Senator Miller. Is he here?
All right. Is Senator Miller here? Senator Miller. I can't believe Senator Miller is not here. Okay. Okay. We'll take that up later. All right. He knew about it, didn't he, Court? Sheena? Yes. Okay, he knew about it. Very good. All right. If not, let's go to the next bill. All right. At this time, we're going to be hearing Senate Bill 167 by Senator William Ligon. This bill, as you remember, was discussed about 4 hours worth of discussion last Wednesday, and we indicated at that time we'd come back. At this time, we had over 65 presenters that presented at that time, 3 overflow rooms that were here, people testifying. And as was indicated at that time, there would be no testimony at this one, only questions by the committee. So that's what we'll be doing at this time, having testimony by the committee. So Senator Ligon, at this time, I turn the mic over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And
Well, what?
after the hearing, we have worked on a substitute bill. And I
Pull your
believe you
mic up closer.
have-
There you
Here
go.
now? Okay.
Now you hear, yeah.
We worked on a substitute bill, and I believe that you have that, and I have these here.
Senator, you know, we're working on, because I'll tell you what we're doing, we're working off your the bill that you had, we ended with. You need to work off that. But, however, I want to encourage you to mention as you go through the bill what you have in your substitute. As you know, the process goes at the end of at that time we will have to motion the original bill, and at that time you can get someone on the committee to offer the substitute, so we'll go from there.
Okay. All right.
Substitute.
All right.
Substitute.
All right, we're going to be working off of, what is it? You have it right there, Senator Dudgeon.
I'm looking. I believe Senator LC 335639 ERS. Is that the substitute that you're working
Yes,
from?
That's
Thank you.
correct. Okay.
Wait a
so
minute, now we got to be working off the original. He can discuss that one, right?
as I go along.
As you go
would
along,
like-
tell us how you change it. Yes, because that is not
Okay.
because the piece of legislation we're working with is the bill that you left we worked on last time, right? Okay.
Okay. All right.
In there.
As we're working along, we're starting out on, we in section 1.3, starting on lines 29, we are directing the state board to initiate a review of the 4 core content areas: math, English, science, and social studies. Coming down, there was some question as to whether or not the bill would limit the ability of the state board to draw from other standards. And on line, it would be 47. We would want to add the words "may draw from content standards," and so that's one thing that we wanted to make clear, that the state board could do that, to look at other high quality standards that other states have had that were ranked nationally and internationally in order to do that. Then moving on over into lines 70 through 100, we're saying that the advisory council would be comprised of 9 parent or grandparent representatives, 3 current.
Senator, where I had some questions. You're talking to the sub where they'll know. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Give us the number on that, where, because a couple of the members asked where you are. Give us
Okay.
that number.
It is LC 33 5639 ERS.
Very good. All right.
Okay. And if you look at that one on line 76, well, I can go back, Mr. Chairman. What I mentioned earlier was on line 49, that they may draw from the content standards of other states. Then in lines 76, we're having 9 grandparent or parent representatives, 3 current or retired teacher representatives, 2 private sector representatives with 1 or more children in public schools. We've added that requirement there, that they have to be in public schools. On the advisory council, one thing that we did is since the council is to be appointed for 2 years, and we would start with math first and then English, we would allow the council to draw from the expertise of teachers and content specialists in math during that 1 year, and then those teachers would serve that 1 year and then go and draw from those that have expertise in English or that teach English, so that makes sense, and that gives them the ability to work within their subject matter, and certainly would be of great aid, and they would in that process. Then, of course, we go through the review process and their hearings that are held within the congressional district, where those standards and proposed changes to standards can be reviewed, and there can be ample opportunity for public comment, so that everyone knows exactly what's going on, and there's no question about the standards and the process, and to hopefully ensure that we are able to acquire some high quality standards. And of course, those proposed standards would go to our universities, and there are 2 content standards from experts, 2 professors from the universities on that committee as well, that can provide assistance with that. Moving on into section 1.4, we're making it clear that the state of Georgia will, and that's on page 7, lines 214 through 265. We're making it clear that the state of Georgia is going to retain control over the development and revision of its content standards. We're just stating that the policy is that we're not going to get into national standards. And you know, that's really a policy. If you look at all of the federal education laws, the first one that was ever passed in this nation, and that was under President Jimmy Carter, and you look at the congressional record and the discussions that were held on the floors of the Senate and the House of Representatives, it's made clear that that was the policy at that time, and that you know, the federal government we shouldn't get into national curriculum, and of course standards drive curriculum, and that's been the understanding of education policy throughout this nation. And so in that regard, having that in this bill is no different from anything that we've been operating under all along. And so therefore we believe that it's consistent, and that's only come up recently, in the very recent future, with the advent of the national standards movement. on page 268 on lines 246 through 265. We're stating the same thing with regards to our assessments, that the state of Georgia would control those assessments, and we wouldn't get into national assessments. And if you recall, when we withdrew from the park, that was done for two reasons. One, because of the cost, and two, because we could not control what was on those tests. And that's a principle that's just reflected within the bill. We also make it clear there was a lot of concern that this would somehow cut out the SAT, the ACT, and other national tests. And we specifically mention that that will not occur, and that those types of tests are permissible. And that's stated on lines 262 to 265. We don't believe that the language of the bill ever did that, but just to make that perfectly clear, Mr. Chairman, that was stated within the bill. On lines 267 through 276, again, we make it clear that the local school systems would have the flexibility to determine their curriculum, and to go back and have curriculum that's aligned to the Georgia performance standards. Now, there was a lot of complaint that said, well, teachers may be graded and rated. You know, we have the high stakes grading coming in next year. If that were to occur, and that wouldn't be fair to them. And one thing that we did up in lines 258 to 259, and this was at the suggestion of some school superintendents that contacted me and said, you know, you should consider doing this during this development period, that there's a moratorium on the consequences tied to those assessments. And, you know, why not have a pilot program and allow our teachers to get comfortable with that and have some experience with that before we start imposing those hard sanctions on them right away. If you're preparing a football team, you don't go out and play a game without some scrimmages. You prepare for it, and you go through some real life experience with it, and that would allow them to do that, and that would be fair and equitable for our teachers. Moving on to the data portion, which starts in Article 3, we have made that much more concise, and we believe that it still addresses a lot of the privacy concerns. Looking in sections 313 through 322, we make it abundantly clear that the information there listed is just not to be collected or disclosed. And then in 327, we make it clear that access to personally identifiable information is restricted to the authorized representatives of the state agency. That is, those who need to get to that personally identifiable information are the ones that should have access to it, and not third parties or contractors. But then if you are a contractor, in lines 340 through 343 that provides a service, you are to comply with the FERPA laws, the federal privacy laws, but also we're putting in some requirements for contracts, such that any party who has access to personally identifiable information under a contract, they have to enter into a written contract that restricts internal access to individuals that have a legitimate educational interest. It limits the uses of the information for the purposes stated in the contract. It requires adequate administrative and physical and technical safeguards, security measures for that information. It requires adequate encryption technology to be used to protect that information if it's transmitted. It requires an annual security audit with acceptable notification plans in case there is a security breach, so that our parents would be notified in the event that a breach were to occur. And really, those are matters which should be, but frequently are not, in contracts with vendors and third-party representatives. And we also make sure that if personally identifiable information would not be disclosed to the federal government except as may be required by law. So we've eliminated the reference to the all of the cloud technology because that should be covered under the contract provisions of the bill. It was not necessary to repeat all of that. And if you have a good contract with your cloud provider that requires these security measures, then certainly they would be covered, and that information should be protected. And then we also provide in lines 398 through 346 that if a parent wants to know what the nature of the type of information that's collected, that a parent could request that, and they would be given that information upon request. And then finally, we changed the structure of the penalty provisions and really trimmed that down and made it so that there would be a penalty of up to $1,000, and that the contractor, if they're violating the provisions of the contract or the law, that they could lose their contract with the state, and certainly that would be a big incentive for them to protect the private information of the students. So.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. Do I have any comments now, questions from the committee? At the posture we're in, the committee may ask questions. There are no comments from the audience. We had testimony, as I said, for about 4 hours the other night. And you'll be taken in the order that your lights are turned on. So right now I have comments from Representative Dudgeon. Question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have one comment before we proceed. Is that the education community knows we put out a substitute that Representative Sutter and I worked on that's been out for a couple of days. Just wanted to say that since the author is not supportive of that substitute, and because I would also have to have a few more technical amendments, that I'm not prepared to offer that substitute for the meeting today. Okay. So I just wanted everyone to know that that substitute is not on the table today. I do want to thank the author. The data section in this bill is much cleaner, in my opinion, and I think it accomplishes 99% of the same purpose. And I appreciate the work on the data section. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative, I have 15. That's Representative Casas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the author, my friend. On page 8, I'm looking at subsection D. I know this came up in subcommittee, and I just like an explanation. We have the subsection dealing with all the mandated state criterion, but then it has a provision on line 248 that says unless required by federal statute. So if the federal government passes a law, this whole subsection is obliterated.
Well, and that was out of concern that, if federal law governs, and we would have to deal with that. But
so if Common Core becomes federal law,
we would have to
we'd abide. Okay. My other concern is on lines 263 to 265, and I believe one of the members brought this up. You have listed there quite a few standardized testing companies: the National Assessment of Educational Progress, the Scholastic Achievement Test, et cetera, et cetera. Mr. Chairman, do we usually have issues listing companies in code?
Pardon?
Listing companies in code. Because, what if they go out of business at the end of the year?
I'll let our legislative council answer that. Places them in there and talk about it. What's your number? Number 21? All right.
In that language, if you look on 263, such as the national assessment, these are basically just examples. And we do actually already have NAEP referred to in the code, as well as the SAT. So there is precedent for that. But it's just, by way of illustration.
Very good.
That get your questions?
I'm good.
All right. Do I have any other questions? Yes, I do. The light's beginning to light up. All right, 29. That's Representative Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, I just want to ask my question again.
Sure.
Can you give me 2 to 3 specific standards that you have concerns with? Because I haven't heard from your office.
You have a packet there. and there's a
I actually
comparison.
don't, but Representative Benton has been kind enough to share with me.
Right.
But
We'll
yes.
have you on.
Right, and there's ample material. There's a complete review and comparison of the English standards. There are comments on the math standards. There are works of various authors, one from Seton Hall University, the other one University of Pennsylvania, a paper from Professor Mark Berline and Sandra Stotsky. Professor Berline is from Emory University, that are commenting and criticizing that. But really the ultimate question is whether we want, and not what this bill is all about, is whether we want Georgia to determine those standards and assessments, or we're going down the road of nationalizing, of nationalist standards.
And I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate you bringing these for me, but
Right.
do you specifically have some?
I would have to go through that and point it out to you, and we could do that. That would take me some time, but
Okay.
I've provided you with information there that you would request.
Thank you.
Number 19, that's Representative Setzler, all right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the author, I'd like to thank you as well on the data side. This is to committee members who might not have been tracking the progress and the evolution of this bill. This data section, and I want to direct this to the author. Would you agree this would provide the strongest protection of the longitudinal data system data, perhaps of any state in the nation?
I would agree with that.
And-
It would. Yes, it would. It's a great improvement, and it provides a lot more data protection and requirements. And not only that, it allows parents to know the nature of information that's being collected and maintained. And I believe that one important principle is notice and disclosure, and having that opportunity to know what's going on.
I want to let the audience know the reason there's not a lot of questions. We asked questions for like 4 hours the other day, so they about questioned Senator to death, I think. So I have no more questions. So are there any other questions? Oh, you have one more, Representative Sets, all right.
Mr. Chairman, appropriate time, I'd like to be recognized and make a motion.
All right, I was going to ask, I will entertain a motion at this time. What's your motion?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the committee substitute offered by Senator Ligon and move due pass.
And what is that number?
The LC version 335639 ERS.
All right, I have a motion that we move to do pass for the Senate substitute LC 335639 ERS. Do I have a second? Second. I have a second. I have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or any discussion? All right, number 6, that is Representative Morgan. Glad to see you there, Representative Morgan. All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chair, it's been
Yes,
a busy
ma'am.
day. I'm sorry. Forgive
You just
me.
left the madam, didn't you?
Exactly. I have a comment, and then I have a procedural question.
All right.
My comment is that to the author, I appreciate all of your work. I know you've spent a lot of time, and you're very passionate about this issue. But I have to say, as we get ready to take this vote, that I hope that we'll take the politics out of this issue. It's been very disappointing to see some of the discussion, and while I respect a lot of the work that has happened and respect the individuals who've worked on this, kids are at the end of this decision. I very briefly, Mr. Chairman, was dropping my daughter off to school yesterday morning, and her teacher was excited about all of the work that she was doing, and she happened to mention the words Common Core, and how and all of her years of teaching, she was so proud of how she's watching students develop their critical thinking skills. And then I made a face, and she said, "What is it?" And I said, "We're debating a bill right now that would have a huge impact on Common Core." And she was so disappointed and frustrated, and it was hard for me to tell her that from my view, a lot of this just looks like politics, that if we would take out all of the stuff about federalism and national stuff and just look at what's happening to kids and how this teacher is watching the impact that this is having on kids in her classroom, why it is we're even having this discussion. And so with that said, Mr. Chair, I know there's a motion on the table.
All right.
My procedural question
All right,
is,
that's it.
would it be the proper time to move to table this bill, and would that take precedent over the motion for due pass?
Yes, you can move that.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chair, I move
Now,
to table
all right,
Senate Bill
I
167.
have a motion to table the bill. Do I have a second? Second. I have a second. All in favor of tabling the bill, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. Aye. All right. All in favor of tabling it, raise your hand. All right. All against tabling, raise your hand. The motion fails. Okay. Now, we'll move right on. I have a comment, number 24. Oh, all right. 19. All right.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'd like to share with the committee my motion to pass is based on there is important policy in this bill. There's been a lot of concerns, and we can debate a perfect bill. I will tell you that I think the gentleman is very forthright when he says he listened to a lot of feedback. I will tell you a whole variety of folks, some of whom are on this panel, listen to an extraordinary amount of feedback on the data side to ensure this bill does not have unintended consequences. I think it's an important part, Mr. Chairman. I would also say that let's reflect on the policy that's contemplated here. This bill deals with moving forward. This doesn't try to retill any issues that have been settled in the past. This deals with moving forward.
That's right.
That every 5 years, the state of Georgia has a in fact, an open process that involves the public that is unprecedented in reviewing things that affect our school kids. I mean, 92% of school kids in the state of Georgia go to public schools. This has an extraordinary effect in our state, and to suggest that a process that's anything less than this open, I think, is to suggest that we're not committed to max openness. So I think this is very important. And then lastly, what the effect of Section 1-4 does is to ensure that moving forward, the state of Georgia doesn't bind itself to any standard that the state of Georgia doesn't approve. This does not retill the grounds with Common Core. It's being taught in our schools today, and there may be some debate about what the impact may be, but I'll say very clearly we will be, as a state, not moving the goalpost on teachers in terms of what they're teaching in their classrooms.
Okay.
And I think there's been a lot of hyperbole, but moving forward, this has a significant long-term impact, and I think it's to that point we ought to strongly consider supporting it.
All right. 28. That's
Thank you,
Representative Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to make sure that I'm clear and all the other members are clear on the posture of the committee right now. There's been a motion and a second. Wait, let me finish my question. Motion to do pass and a second on the House substitute.
No. There's a motion and a second on Senator Liggins' substitute. Substitute LC 335639 ERS. As you heard Representative Dudgeon say, we are not, want to say that again, Representative Dudgeon, what your comment was. Listen very carefully to this one, the House substitute.
We had a few people come in late, so I'll reiterate. Based on the fact, we did produce the House substitute, based on the fact that the author was not supportive of the House substitute, and also based on the fact that I did receive some minor things of the data that need to be done that are not ready. Based on those two facts, the House substitute is not printed today and is not in your folder. So this is not the House substitute.
This is not the House substitute.
Then I think we need to, because I don't know whether everybody else was unclear on that. I thought that the motion that when he was talking about the substitute, he was talking about the senator's sub and not the House sub.
He was talking about the senator's substitute. The motion was to do pass the senator's substitute. That takes precedence over the original bill. So now we're dealing with the senator's substitute. That is what we're working on.
All right, then I misunderstood. I thought we were working from the House sub.
No, it's not even printed. You don't even have it. It's not even here, right?
All right.
So we'll be voting. So the posture we're in at this time, we have a motion and a second. So we will be voting to do pass the Senate substitute, which is Senator Liggins' substitute that he's gone over. So we're here to vote either yes for the substitute, which is the bill now, or no for the substitute. Is that clear to everyone? We're operating on the Senate substitute, not the House. All right, everybody clear on that? All right, any other questions? I want to be sure everybody understands where we are. All right, we're getting ready to vote. All in favor of the Senate substitute, which is LC 335639 ERS, please indicate by raising your hand. All right, count them for me, Courtney. 3. That's 5. All right. All opposed, raise your hand. 13-5. The bill fails. It's failed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you,
I
Mr.
appreciate
Thank you,
the
Mr. Chairman.
opportunity to work.
We still have another bill. No one leave. We still aren't through. Senator, is Senator Miller here?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Miller signed a document saying I have the authority to present his bill in his absence. So I think we can do it pretty quickly.
All right, what is his bill?
Senate Bill 384.
384, committee.
All right, you want to wait? I mean, it's a little bit noisy, Mr. Chairman.
If you have a conversation, please take them out in the hall. We're still meeting. Thank you. All right, if they go ahead.
All right, I'll be loud and quick. We had in my subcommittee Senate Bill 384, the American Founding Policy and Principles Act. It is a resolution, a bill, it's more like a resolution. It asks the State Board take into consideration a list of things about our form of government. Went through the list. We also amended in subcommittee Section B to change it from a shall to a may. And so at this point it is, I think, an important piece of legislation, but it is also, from a technical point of view, more of an urging situation than a mandate on the State Board. And
Chairman, let me.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, go ahead. All right, you got it. Everybody, any questions on that bill? Any questions? All right, go ahead.
There's also an amendment which was passed out. We had a very small bill that came over from Chairman Tippins, and the Senate, I think, passed unanimously. It's Amendment AM 331426. This is, and I can't remember the name of this Senate bill, but it was another Senate bill that was on our committee that didn't have a chance to make a hearing. It's literally one sentence long. It says the month of September of each year is designated of Georgians of Great Character Month to encourage recognition of outstanding persons in Georgia history. So my amendment is we just attach this. It's around curriculum suggestion, which is similar to Senator Miller's bill, and that there's really no objection to this that I'm aware of. And once we cleaned up the issues with the Senate sponsor, I just want to go ahead and do the favor for our friends in education over there and add this to the bill.
Okay. All right, we have several questions. First of all, number 8, that is Representative Dixon.
As the members of the committee, I think, would remember, I typically have voted against any time when the legislative body tries to mandate individual curriculum items. However, the way this one is constructed, I would be in favor of supporting both the bill and the amendment.
Very good. All right. Number 26.
Down here, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Now, that was a question that Chairman Dixon just raised. I thought I heard the author say we were just going to be suggesting this.
Yes, sir.
All right, but on line 23, it says the Board of Education shall ensure. Now, I see on line
26.
20.
What they're ensuring is that they take those into consideration. It doesn't mean they have to do the operative words there to make it a urging thing is the words line 26 take into consideration.
Okay.
And then the other word that sort of makes it that way is may, and Chairman Dixon did this in the subcommittee on line 62.
Right, I saw that.
Yeah,
I was concerned
and
about that.
And
shall.
26, the shall, what they're shall doing is taking into consideration. They're not shall adopting.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, number 15, that is, hey, Representative Cassis, okay. You're on.
Now I'm on. Representative Dudgeon, I don't know if you can speak for Senator Millar. You do have the letter, right?
I got a letter. I'll start right here. I'm Fran Millar. You can tell him I want to be Fran.
I don't know. On line 44, this has just been a sentence that I even spoke to Senator Millar about, having to take into consideration for someone in a classroom to decide what a virtuous and moral person is. I'd like to delete subsection F and renumber accordingly.
My authorization says Mike doesn't authorize that 384 and agree with amendments. So that's my permission.
Very good.
I have no objection to this.
Then I'd like to offer an amendment to.
At the proper time, we'll
no
have,
objection.
Betsy is noting that, at the proper time we'll do that, all right? 26.
As my understanding, when Representative Millar went to the Senate, he's now Senator Miller. That's there was a name change when he went over. I just want to pass that along.
No longer Millar, it's Miller.
Yeah, so just thought I'd clear that up for you.
Good. All right, we have no one else, so at this time, I'll entertain a motion. So, all right, do I have a second? All right, now I'll entertain amendments. All right, we have an amendment at this time. So, Betsy, would you read the amendment from Representative Cassis?
It would be to delete lines 45 and 46 and re-letter accordingly.
44?
I'm sorry, 44 and 45.
Is that correct? Are they want to get that? Any objection? If not, so approved. All right.
I have an amendment, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we have another amendment.
I would like to adopt AM 331426.
All right, we have the second amendment. And, all right, tell us what that does once again.
That takes the bill from Chairman Tippins and Senator Thompson from the Senate and just simply puts it on there doing September as Georgians a Great Character Month.
Okay, any objection? All right, so approved. Now you have on the table Senate Bill 384 as amended, and I have a motion and a second. Everybody, all for it, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Has passed. Now I want you to listen very carefully to a statement from Betsy. Listen very carefully. All right, Betsy.
This is just clarifying what the posture of the committee is on SB 176. Basically, because 167. Basically, because the motion failed, it's as if the committee took no action at all. So the bill is still with the committee and could come back for other action if it were put on the agenda or the committee. Right.
No, though, yeah.
Right. So it's still with the committee.
Still in the committee.
Pardon?
Now, if you do a do not pass, that will have the effect of it will move it on, but with the do not pass recommendation, that is an action of the committee. But the failure of a motion is not an action of the committee, or doesn't have the effect of an action of the committee.
I see Representative Morgan.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion.
All right, what's your motion?
I move do not pass on Senate Bill 167.
Do I have a second? I have a second. Any discussion? Do you have a? All right, Representative Dudgeon. Oh, I mean, you have a question? Oh, Representative Setzler.
I have a parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
If the motion do not pass fails, then the bill's still in the committee. Is that correct?
No, if the bill passes, the motion fails.
If the motion fails, do not pass. If it
if the motion, yes, that's true.
It's like
that's
it
right.
was. It's like it was.
Okay.
All right. Any other? Okay. At this time, do I have a number 12? Who is that? Okay. Yes, you may speak. Yeah, you're on the committee.
Parliamentary inquiry.
Daisy, all right.
So if there are members who want to keep working on Senate Bill 167 and try to perfect it, they would want to vote no on the do not pass motion. Is that correct?
That's correct. Okay. All right. Number 9. That is. All right. You're fine. All right. So at this time, I have 24. And everything's. You understand it. Now, what we have a do not pass on Senate Bill 167. What that means, if that passes, it's over. At the present time, the bill is still in the body of the committee, and we may still work with it. Is that correct? All right. So, all right. So, I have a motion and a second. All in favor of Representative Morgan's motion to do not pass, please indicate by raising your hands. If you're in favor of that motion, all right, count them, Courtney. How is it? 11. If you're against that motion, raise your hand. 11 to 6, it passes. Okay, that's it. Motion carries. Motion carries. Okay, any other questions from the committee? Any questions from the committee? Committee, we may. This probably may be our last meeting, but we may have to, if we have any more Senate bills we need to look at, I may call another meeting, but probably the last one. I want to thank this committee for some of the hardest work I've ever seen any committee do since I've been down here, and I appreciate your hard work and appreciate you being here. We're adjourned.